can GitHub Copilot come up with decent code given this documentation? So the aim of this function is to read a configuration file using config parser and get a number of values. The keys are given, the type is given, and it should also be checked whether that configuration is correct, whether it makes sense. So it also raises some exceptions. Let's see how GitHub Copilot does in generating code. The first thing it does is generate a configuration parser, so that's already good. Then it reads the config file, and that's excellent. Then it checks for systems, so that would be the section. And then it is going to check the output file. The number of particles, the number of steps, the step size. It does the conversions correctly. The temperature. It has now extracted all values. So now it checks the conditions, raising a value error. That's good. Number of steps, very similar. Step size. Okay. Looks good as well. Temperature. Looks right. Okay. So that's not bad. So it's checked everything and then it returns the config. Okay. As another example, let's give some module level documentation and see what GitHub Copilot comes up with this time. So it imports is close, that's already a good start. And then it defines a class point. Okay, it doesn't include proper documentation, but that can be fixed later. And it defines the method. Okay. It's a function which takes 3 points P, Q and R. Now it does provide function documentation, which is reasonable. So the first if condition checks whether the point R is actually on the line defined by P and Q. It does the check in such a way that there is no chance of division by 0, so that's good. And essentially then it checks whether the point R is on the line segment, so it's essentially in between the points P and Q on the line which they define. If so, it returns true, otherwise it returns false. So that looks quite decent. Let's see whether we can improve matters a little bit. So I'm not quite happy with the documentation. Let's try and give it the format I prefer. And I would prefer some type information. So that is more decent documentation. Now of course we want this to be consistent. And that is considerably better. So as you can see, just like with ChatGPT, in fact you can go into sort of a conversation with GitHub Copilot and get it to use the style which you actually prefer.